Hello, once again, everyone. It's Andy on another episode of the High Performance Human podcast. Today's guest, something of an enigma in amongst the real estate industry, but she's done it in a way that has just provided such a breath of fresh air to what is becoming a slightly stuffy industry over the course of the last however many years. And it was ready for someone like this next guest to come in and give it a real buzz. Now, Laura Shooter has been in the real estate space for 7 years, working alongside her other half, Samuel, up in Dubbo, New South Wales, running a real estate firm that has been going absolutely gangbusters. You wouldn't have thought that much in Dubbo would be going gangbusters, but these two are most certainly proving that that can be the case. The reason why I've asked Laura to come on this High Performance Human podcast is because of the way that she approaches not only this industry, but everything and everyone in general. And I, for one, have a tremendous amount of respect for how she goes about it. Laura, a very warm welcome to the High Performance Human podcast. How is life up in Dubbo?
Thank you, Andy. And thanks for having me. Life in Dubbo is great. It's actually a bustling city. We've got so much happening here, and we get to go along for the ride with that. It's a great time to be in real estate in Dubbo.
Oh, for sure, man. You guys are certainly proving that you're very much right in the thick of it with everything that you're doing and the dynamic way that you do all of your work. It's really, really cool to see. Now, Laura, we have a little tradition. We have 2 questions to kick things off. The first one, we'll get you to tell all our guests, all our listeners, who you are and what you're about. And then we'll get your definition of what high performance human is. So first things first, for the few people that don't know who you are, give us a bit of an idea as to your background and what's brought you to this point to date.
All right. So I'm Laura Shooter, and at the moment I'm running SJ Shooter Real Estate together with my husband Samuel here in Dubbo. We grew that from a bedroom in our home through to now we've got a team of 15, lovely office location, and Samuel's an amazing agent, sells about 100 properties a year, and our rent roll's growing. We're at 600 at the moment, but hopefully that'll continue to go north. So that's the plan. My background, I got siphoned into real estate from social work and specifically child protection. So when Samuel started the business, I was happily employed at community services in doing child protection. And I think I got into the business just to help out for a little while. Before I did child protection, I worked in public housing, and I used to do tenancy management for the state government, effectively out further west than Dubbo. And I thought that bit of experience might help him get things set up a bit. But what I found was that I really enjoyed being in business, that it's probably a bit more fun than working for the state government, certainly more nimble. And then once we kind of started looking outside just here at the industry and what sort of we can tap into, I found that actually I love this industry, and there's so many people using their agencies and their what they have to make a great contribution to their communities. And that's one of the reasons I stay. So I've been lucky enough lately to get some speaking invitations. So I love being able to contribute back to the industry, but I also love being able to go out and bring back the best of what's happening to Dubbo, so that we do have access to that here. And then I love being able to demonstrate that you don't miss out on anything by living regionally.
And that's actually a really, really good point, that last one that you made. Everybody seems to think that it has to be the bright lights of the big smoke if you want to really make a success of something like real estate. But in essence, there are some insane operators in regional New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, or any state really, that are just having a whale of a time and doing it with a degree of humility that absolutely matches to the town or the city that they are in, that is external to the CBD and the bright lights, right? Which is so good. And one thing that I've noticed, especially over the last few years, is the volume of attention that regional agents are getting within the real estate space. It's been tremendous because in terms of good practice, particularly around community, the regional markets have just got it sorted and sussed to such a greater extent than some of the higher turnover, higher churn city or metro-based offices. I just think that we've all got a hell of a lot to learn going the other way as well, from regional to city, as opposed to the other way around, which tends to be the perceived case, right? So now, Laura, there's a few things that I want to dig into with your background, but before we do that, just give us an idea. What is your idea, or what is your definition of a high performance human? What does that represent to you?
I think it's someone who knows who they are and knows what they're about and what they want to do, and they're going to go after it, take the steps necessary to get there.
I find this hilarious. Everybody's answer has been different so far, which is amazing. It's so good, and I really like that you're sort of in line with. I know that Sam McLean in her episode mentions that a high performance human to her is someone that can actually go after their dreams. And I think from your point of view, knows who they are, knows what they're about, and really works to that. Very much a sense of knowing oneself, without trying to get too biblical about it. Knowing thyself is something that I think is becoming, I think that will become a strong theme around high performance humans, is that the thing that I'm very much becoming aware of is that in order to make any sort of meaningful impact in whichever way you want to go, you really do need to understand who you are before you can go and influence anybody else.
That's right. And
it's the same as happiness as well, right? You got to be happy in yourself before you can help others to be happy as well.
Yeah. And that's it. It's not about a comparison, like high performance for someone. Just it has to look different for someone else. It can't be by, I can only be high performing if I look like this person or that person. It's like, what is high performance for me?
Now, in terms of the pillars, or what I've referred to as the elements that I feel contribute towards becoming a high performance human, being success, influence, connection, and happiness. The one thing that I wanted to start off with you is just focusing at that moment on success. Now, you mentioned just then that being a high performance human has nothing to do with a comparison, right? There's no barometer that says, right, you get to this level and you are automatically you qualify to be a high performance human. But obviously there are some very practical elements to life where there are tangible measurables, right? And success obviously is one of the obvious elements within there where you would perhaps be more adjoined to the numericals of your business or your organization or your performance, right? And there will be a degree of comparison, but to a degree. But what is your definition of success, especially as someone that's come from a social services, very much a humanitarian sort of mindset that you would have gone into those sorts of roles with? What's success for you?
Is it all right if I have two definitions of success?
Have as many as you want. There's no rules for this. You make the rules.
Well, by one, I haven't quite cracked it yet. So I kind of wanted one where I'm on track and one. But really, I think this is the one that I'm still working at and still trying to figure out. I think for me, the real definition of success is that are the important people in my life getting the best of me?
Oh.
And
I like that one.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm quite there yet, if I'm being really honest with you and with myself. But I like that because the best of me still comes from being able to fully explore what being me is, right? So it doesn't mean that I just spend all my time with the important people in my life. It's about, I guess, going out there and making my highest and best contribution and finding what that is and going after that. And but also not at the expense of the people who I love and who are important to me in my life. So to be honest, I don't think I've quite found that exactly. It's a bit of a seesaw thing. But I do have another kind of sense of what success looks like, and that is doing what you can from where you are with what you have. And that's what I really try and do. And what I say to people, like, I think there's a lot of pressure on young people. We've got a lot of young people on our team, and a lot of pressure to kind of figure things out and make sure you're doing something that's contributing to what you want to do long term. But what I like to say to them is my experience has been, just by doing an excellent job of whatever is in front of you, and really being critically engaged in that ultimately leads you to the next thing. You discover what you're good at, what you enjoy, and that kind of helps reveal the next step to you. You don't have to kind of see something off in the horizon and be working towards that. It's like, no, I'm here, I'm now. And by being excellent and giving this my best, that's going to illuminate just the next step for you.
I'll tell you what, she's onto it. This one, I told you, gang. I told you, Laura's going to be an absolute gem. I told you. Now, if I may ask, you mentioned that you're still working on getting the important people in your life getting the best of you. Obviously, to a degree, that would be subjective, right? So you would feel in yourself that you are perhaps shortchanging one or two of your loved ones, but to them, they might be thinking that Laura's just absolutely killing it in her life, and we love her to bits, and she's doing the best thing since sliced bread, and blah 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 blah. In your own opinion, though, where do you think it is that you feel you need to improve in order to get closer to this definition of success?
Definitely the family side of things. So Samuel and I have a lot of honest conversations with each other, so that's good. And so I know from his honest feedback that there's some things that I need to do a little better at, and I've been, working on that. And then the kids, they're telling me, I'm hearing them through their feedback, that I'm away too much. And so for me, I have to figure out how I either need to help the kids understand why this is important, or I need to make some decisions to maybe do a little less, be home a little more. And I think where I really need to improve is just being present when I'm with them. That's for Samuel and for the kids, and just be there when I'm there. And I think if I can do that better, a lot of the other stuff, I'd probably get away with a little more. I think you just get a bit frazzled and tired, and your brain wants to kind of check out. And sometimes I find the noise and the chaos of the kids a little bit overwhelming. So I kind of like zone out a little bit. And I think the ability to just stay in that would mean a lot to them.
I think
I think we get a lot of things right, but that's. Yeah,
I really like and thank you for being open and vulnerable in this regard, because one of the whole reasons as to why this whole High Performance Human podcast has come to be is because success parameters for us as professionals is very much defined in many aspects, right? However, the human part of this is the bit that I think if we're all honest with ourselves, most of us are really struggling to get it right on all fronts.
Yeah.
And everybody bangs on about work-life balance, but ultimately work is a part of life as much as your family is a part of your life. And it's a case of working it all in one sort of symphony, as opposed to having separated sort of compartments of your life, right? Because then you segregate one part of your life from another part of your life, then it's just going to lead to insanity. But I really like this whole that you brought up the topic of the need to be present. Now, for me, I know that when, for example, when I'm calling an auction, for example, the level of presence that I have when I'm in the moment is something that I wish I could bottle up. I wish I could bottle it up and drink it regularly. I don't drink alcohol, but I'd certainly become an addict of that.
Yeah.
And because the sense of flow that I feel with my brain, with my heart, with my mind, with my gut, when it comes to making quick decisions and spontaneity and all that sort of stuff, it's like my being operates on a higher level. Now, obviously, a part of the reason why I'm so present is because there is a heck of a lot of external pressure that is being pushed upon me that makes me be present. It's kind of one of the reasons why I box, or why I do combat sports, because if I don't stay present, I get punched in the face and it's quite painful. But I don't really want my kids to punch me in the face. And I, you know what I mean? And so this whole thing of being present, and obviously you can blame technology, but ultimately we as humanity, we invented technology. So we've only got ourselves to bloody blame anyway, right? So let's stop blaming technology, kids.
Yeah.
What do you think you can do within yourself that you feel is going to help you? Can you see the path to improvement when it comes to that whole notion of being present?
Yeah, I think there's some just deliberate things I need to do. So probably get my phone out of my pocket and pop it away somewhere when I get home. That would definitely help. It's the simple stuff that, I think. And the other thing is, like, I know there's actually some things that I can't do. So and so I've started just having conversations with the kids around that. So they'll want me to sit and watch a movie with them. And I say to them, okay, I can sit and watch the movie with you, but I'm going to fall asleep, because if I sit still for too long, I fall asleep. It's just what happens. It's just, I can't change it. So I said, and that frustrates them a little bit too, or I can keep pottering that around the house and I'll be awake and I'll be, getting a few things done. So say, what would you prefer? Do you want a sleep mum on the lounge with the movie, or do you want a wake mum pottering around the house? So I think and that's kind of comes back to knowing yourself. So that's been helpful as I've kind of had a bit more self-awareness around things, being able to say to the kids, well, this is what I can do. This is what I can't do. What would you prefer?
How old are your kids?
8 and 10.
8 and 10. So they're becoming very aware of what's going on and whatnot, right? Their level of attention and attentiveness towards dynamics and things like that is becoming a lot more heightened. Right. I'm experiencing that with my 9-year-old daughter as we speak. But it's interesting that you say that you fall asleep during movies, or you can potter around and whatnot. Do you feel that because you are so engrossed with knowledge and learning and improving and all of those sorts of things, do you find that sometimes it's a case of normal life isn't quite quick enough? Because I certainly feel that from time to time.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it. And I think that's part of, like, I know that by the important people in my life getting the best of me, I need to be on, and I need to have these other things happening in my life. It's not actually just about more of this and less of that. It's about because that makes me feel happy and alive when I've got a lot of irons in the fire, a lot of things happening. And but yeah, so and it's not some like I talk a little bit about so my version of boxing is ripstick riding at night. So after
an FYI team, if ever you want to see someone give a serious talk in a fluoro bike helmet, then please go and see Laura on stage.
That was a bit of a trial. It worked out. I didn't fall off on stage. That was good. But so for anyone who doesn't know, a ripstick is like a 2-wheeled skateboard that pivots in the middle. So it's the learning curve on it's quite steep. You stuck at it for a long time, and then you can kind of do it for a while. And it's probably a similar sensation to maybe snowboarding, or that's the kind of thing. And so you have to be there. You have to be in it. If you lose concentration, you fall. And as you get better at it, those falls become higher consequence because you're going a bit quicker and you're not expecting it. So so that's kind of something and I need to do that relatively often, at least a few times a week, for my brain to have that time of just being in the moment and being in the zone. And where was I going with this? We were on like I've discovered that, like, that's something that I can do that helps add that element in. And so then when I'm with the kids, I've had my time. I've had my moment. It's like a good decompressing time, presence time, and helps me kind of process whatever I'm feeling. And so long as I've got those things sprinkled in, I find that I'm able to be more with them when I'm there. Oh, the ripstick riding. So I started riding the ripstick because they were riding their bikes.
Right.
And they were learning to ride their bikes without training wheels. And I found that hella boring. And I just, like, I had to supervise them because they're out on the street. But I'm like, oh man, I can't do this. I find this so, and I start getting like snappy at them, so I got the ripstick so that I had something to kind of be working on. So I didn't just revert to my phone. I wasn't just being crabby at them. And so I'm there trying to figure this thing out while they're doing their thing. And it worked out really well because they're seeing me suck at something new while they were sort of learning those new skills. And that's not why I did it. It makes me sound like a cool, wise mum, but actually I was just a really bored mum trying to keep myself off my phone while they were learning a new skill. And I wanted to be there for that. But again, like the self-awareness, I'm like, oh man, like this is painful for my brain. But I want to be here for it. So yeah.
And I think this whole, and it comes, like you mentioned again, know yourself, know thyself. I think that in order to become a high performance human, I think understanding and they're not vulnerabilities, but understanding the inherent elements of your personality that aren't going to be helpful. Right?
Yeah.
They're not, and I don't see them as vulnerabilities. I just see them as quirks more than anything else. Right? We all have different quirks, and I think understanding and accepting that we have quirks that won't mesh with some people in certain scenarios and will mesh with others in other scenarios. I think that's really, really important when it comes to which scenarios we throw ourselves into. I think that's an identification of opportunities and hazards, shall we say? I think is really cool.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like, so one of those things for me as well is like, I've had to accept that, like, people talk about consistency a lot as an element of success or what you need to be or do in order to have whatever it is. And I've had to kind of accept for myself that consistency doesn't look like a daily or a weekly practice for me. It's like I've had to work out there's things that I need to have in my life in order for me to feel regulated, I guess is a good word. And if I try and say when and how long and how often those things are going to happen, all I end up with is kind of like spiraling disappointment in myself. So consistency is like knowing what are the ingredients that I need to have in my life and applying them as needed rather than kind of going, this is how it's going to look.
Yeah, nice. I like it. Now, I want to take a bit of a 90-degree turn because you're one of the reasons why I find you to be so incredibly refreshing in the real estate space in particular has been your approach to collaboration, to connection, in particularly to connection, which I think is one of the key things for me as to why I see you as a high-performing human is that element of connection is something that you've got like in absolute abundance as far as I can see. And the way that you have such it's non-abrasive, it's non-intrusive, but it's all-encompassing in the respect that you do make so much effort to be at so many events and to support so many things. But it's one thing to do that, but then it's another thing to be able to grow genuine connections with the volume of people that you've managed to grow connections with in the space of time that you've managed to do it in, right? There's people that would go their whole careers and not make as many connections as what you've made, as far as I can see. Now, a lot of that will come down to the values that you have within yourself and how you broadcast those values out to the world. Now, first thing I want to ask, because I want to tie this in with your background with social services and whatnot.
Yeah.
What would you say your values were as a human being? How, what are the defining values for you?
Definitely curiosity has always been there. And And I think like when I actually stop and think, like try and articulate what my values are, it's a bit of it's a big self-awareness exercise. And it's like, I realize now that they've been there a long time. So yeah, curiosity, contribution, and connection, I would say, is a core value of mine as well. But not just connection with people, but connecting disparate things together to create something new. And like love and care, like just I genuinely love and care for people. And
that's obvious. That is really, really obvious. It's obvious with the way that you communicate, whether it's in person or whether it's on social or whether it's through an image or a picture or whatever. I think you're, at the minute, I'd say you're number 2 behind Julie Davis for volume of selfies taken in one day. But curiosity, contribution, connection. Now, making a transition from one industry to another can always be quite confronting, quite challenging at the best of times, you know, and that's if the two industries are relatively aligned, right? So I came from hospitality into real estate. There's obvious synergies there with respect to the selling, with respect to, you know, making connections in a short space of time, so on and so forth. For yourself, social services to real estate, if you were to look at it from an outsider's point of view, because an outsider's perception of one industry to another is like black and white almost, in the sense of social services, you're there for the community, you're there to help people, you're there to contribute as per your values. Real estate is about making money, making deals and the like. When you first made this transition from social services into the real estate space, how easy or difficult was it for you to maintain the values that have served you to that point?
I think, well, I was that outsider with that view of real estate. So I felt a bit icky at first, to be honest, about deciding to go and do real estate. And what I think I never found, the path through it for me was actually more discovering that, like, this isn't opposite. Like, I didn't have to kind of fight to keep my values in play. I just found that actually there was such a natural way for me to continue outworking those values in that context. And then when I sort of stuck my head up a bit and looked around, I'm like, there's lots of people in this industry who are doing the same thing in their own communities. And that's fantastic. So, I think there was no battle to maintain my values in that space. I was just like, this is a whole new place that I can use these things. And like, we didn't have a background in business, and I didn't, like, other than tenancy management for the state, I didn't have a background in real estate. So being curious was exceptionally useful in trying to figure things out as we go. And, you know, just, you know, starting from a bedroom at home, and we were broke, like we were so poor. So there was like, just going from there to then, okay, so now we have an office and now we've got a little bit of money, but now we have a team. Oh crap, what do we do with these people? Like, how do you lead? Like, and a lot of us, you know, we aren't given the tools through our families or through our schools to know how to actually relate to people properly, or like, well, other than surface and like how to deal with difficult situations and how to manage these things. So the value of curiosity and contribution, it worked well. Like, I had to be curious about what to do next. I had to ask people. I had to make sure it was building what we were trying to do in the business. And then, like, that hasn't stopped really, because then, you know, COVID happened and we're freaking out that we're going to go broke, but actually we made a lot of money. And it's like, oh, well, what do we do with all this? We've never had money before. And it's like, even trying to figure out what to do there. What does this mean for tax? What is it like? We're figuring all these things out as we go. And then, like, running a business the size we are now, it's totally different even to what it was a year ago with the way we're growing. And I'm looking ahead knowing that this path, it just doesn't stop. And it's actually super useful to have those two values. That's why I love it, I guess. And that's why I've stayed.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of two-wheeled skateboards that you can buy just keeps growing and growing and growing.
Yes.
So there's a couple of things that I want to unpack with that. The first thing I want to unpack with that is that you said right at the start then that the transition or the first foray into this new industry of yours, where it's very much social services to the corporate environment, okay, which would have been the first sort of jar, going from state to self. Describe that whole ickiness thing. Like, did it make you question who you are? Did it make you question your decisions? Did you fancy doing a U-turn at one point?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so my identity definitely was very tied up in my work that I was doing for community services. I'd always wanted to work in child protection, and that's what I was doing. And there were a lot of different paths I could have taken there to continue that contribution, whether I went down the line of doing, hands-on casework, or if I continued down the path of more like support and project and even policy. I've always been really interested in social policy. And so to actually move out of that, yeah, there definitely was a bit of a loss of identity. And because I only had that stereotypical view of real estate, I'm like, ooh, this feels, it's the fact that it felt a bit opposite to that was why I felt icky. And so, yeah, there was a stepping away from an identity that I'd worn. And then through that, the business, I guess business is very consuming and it is very personal. So I was able to fairly quickly develop a new identity around that, I guess. But in the last couple of years, it's been unpacking that and kind of going, okay, well, actually, who am I? If I'm not a business owner, if I'm not a wife, if I'm not a mother, who actually am I, not just in relation to the things around me in my life? And so that's been a bit of a journey I've been on the last couple of years, and that's been a bit messy and awkward. But yeah, it's worth it because we plan to be alive for a while, and it's worth doing these things to try and know who you are.
Now, like, so you've stumbled across a topic that I think we do need to unpack, and that is this whole sense of identity. Now, if we're to put this into the context of high performance humans, one would assume that part of being a high performance human is having a firm belief in one's own identity, right? A firm belief that you know who you are, like as per your definition. You know who you are, you know what you're about, you know your game inside out. Didn't mean for that to rhyme. And so to hear that, you're absolutely right. A lot of people, majority of people, I'd say a huge majority of people, really are so defined by the role that they have from a work point of view. Like, you just take, and it just takes me back to 2020 when COVID hit, and it was fascinating, not in a fantastic way, to see how many salespeople in particular within the real estate space just crumble because their identity of being big person on campus, driving a car around in the suit, rocking the town, all the rest of it, was ripped away from them. And for a lot of people in that time, that was the thing. It wasn't the fact that their business was struggling or anything like that. Their loss of identity because they weren't putting the suit on was so significant for them. And that's what's resulted in a hell of a lot of mental health challenges that are still, we're getting the aftermath of that right now. The shockwave is coming through. So if we were to go and thinking about your experiences in that sort of struggle of foregoing that identity and the identity that you had, it must have been something that you absolutely loved, because to go into something like child protection, you would have faced some horrific circumstances and some shitty situations that you were there to support and help and whatnot. That takes love. Like I've had, both my parents are police officers. I've got a niece who's an NHS nurse, and you must love what you do to put up with what you put up with, right?
Yeah. And I guess so I was always in support roles. So I wasn't out with the people in that role. I was when I was in tenancy, I was out with the people, and geez, we had some interesting situations there. With child protection, I was supporting the team, but I was in some very specific teams, and the work that I did required me to know what was happening.
What the go was, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, and it was. And I think when that is your world, and I was quite young, like I was only in my early 20s when I was doing that work, is that I think it can skew your worldview a little bit about what people are like. You're spending 100% of your time on people who have highly dysfunctional lives, and you can kind of get a little bit scared of the world and feel like 100% of people are like that because it can make you a little bit suspicious. And but yeah, so I've really, I guess, tried to embrace an assumption that actually most people are good, but I had to do that deliberately after that kind of foray into my working life. Yeah.
Now, letting go of that identity, because a lot of people will attach the element of success to this identity piece, right? I would suspect that in order to be successful, your identity within the game of whichever game you are playing or whichever industry you are in would need to be one of winning, right? Or doing well or succeeding in some way, shape, or form. I think a high performance human would be able to detach their identity or make that detachment between identity and success and allow that identity to be transferable across whichever element of their life they are in, right?
Yeah.
Let's theorize for a minute. Now, coming into your real estate life, where you said that you had to form a new identity. How long was it before this wall was found, the wall that you've hit with regards to understanding who the hell I actually am? Was there any particular situation, circumstance, or gathering of circumstances that really brought this to realization for you? Because I think this is probably one of the breakthrough moments that a lot of people need to go through in order to sort of really take ownership of this high performance thing.
That's a great question. And look, there has been, and I think one of my favorite sayings is life only makes sense in reverse, but you have to live it forwards. So something like that. Yeah, it's like you look back and you're like, oh, I can see that now. But when you're in it, geez, none of it makes sense. But for me, so yeah, there definitely was kind of a culmination of circumstances. So when I started in the business, I was very much, my goal was to help Samuel out and then kind of get out. That was the plan. And I think that's been beneficial in that my goal has never been to be about a particular job in the business. It's actually been about equipping the business to run without me. And that's been quite a useful foundation when it comes to growing team and making sure that, it's the systems carrying the weight,
autonomy,
not the people.
Things like that. Yep.
Yeah. So that was a useful foundation. But what was kind of tied up in that was a real reluctance and a hesitation and actually a fear of being seen. And I wanted to not be seen in any of that. So it was like about making Samuel shine, making the team shine, making that. And if you'd asked me, and I verbalized this back then, I said, my biggest fear is being seen. Wow. And so to kind of get to the place where I'm not only not afraid of that, but leaning into that has been a big part of the journey. And there was a key point in that. And that in 2020, I did Elite Agents Transform program, which is like it's a 30-day challenge. They change it up every year. But that particular year, it was just, the teacher finds a student at the right time. And when I saw that program, I thought, oh, geez, this would be good for the team to do. You know, we were coming into a bit of an uncertain time. Just trying to remember the timing of it. I think when I signed up, we weren't really sure if like what was going to eventuate with COVID.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh yeah, this would be good for the team. I'll sign them up for it. And then I'm like, I guess a real leader would do it as well. And so I signed up for it too. And just going through that, I was lucky enough to be, you know, I was paired with Hannah Gill as my buddy, and she really, I guess she saw that maybe I had some ingredients that were actually, you know, pretty cool, and I was talking to her about some things we were doing, and she really like, I guess, you know, lifted me up and gave me some feedback that was like, wow, this is actually really cool. And I'm like, oh, is it? Like, I wouldn't know. I'm just here trying to hide and make it, prop everybody else up. And then it kind of got to the pointy end of it, and you have to win. Like it's a competition as well. And I'm like, you have to pitch to win. And I'm like, oh gosh, no, I don't do that. And so I was sort of saying to Hannah, I'm like, you know, I've learned so much. It's been really good. I don't really have time for this, or nor do I want to do it. And she's like, no, you need to do it. And I think something that I've always done, I've always taken what I do seriously. So I either won't do something, or if I do something, I just can't not do it properly. Like I want to do it. And I don't do that on purpose. It's actually kind of frustrating sometimes, but once I'm in, I'm all in. So I'm like, okay, all right, I'll win. I'll go and I'll win. So I did that, and I did it. I won, and I guess like I was very visible in that. And actually, for a long time, when I'd have these experiences where, so there was a bit of media like coverage that came with that, and it was lovely, but I found it very overwhelming, and actually like it tanked me for a while. Like I had to kind of recover from that. And so it's been this kind of clunky process of, I guess, what would you say? It's like improving my tolerance for it. And actually that's where my Instagram came about. And you're right, there's a lot of selfies, and I do that as tolerance testing for my fear of being seen. And so that's like putting muscle around that thing that I found incredibly uncomfortable, and would actually cause me to have this kind of boom bust cycle in my energy. Anytime we'd get a little bit of attention in the media, or if someone wanted to do a podcast, or even in the local paper and stuff, it'd be like nice, but I'd have this real bust of energy and have to kind of like drag myself out of a hole for a while. That's very honest. But yeah, that's what happened there. And so, yeah, I think if you ever do come across my Instagram, it's very self-indulgent, but yes, it's battle testing for that. Yeah, it's kind of trying to increase my tolerance for that, and it has helped. And then also on my Insta, that's where I've put like, I'm like, okay, so who would I be if I'm not wife, mother, business owner? Like, who am I? Take all those things away. So what I've come up with there was curious, energetic, and easily fascinated. And easily fascinated came about my daughter. I was feeling irritated at her one day because she was taking too long to do something she was supposed to do. She was getting distracted. I'm like, stop getting distracted. She's like, Mum, I'm easily fascinated. And I'm like, thank you. Because I'm a bit hard on myself for being easily distracted. I'm like, no, I'm easily fascinated. So, and it's a core part of who I am. I'm never going to get away from it. So, easily fascinated, energetic, curious, and that's what I've been trying to like put some muscle around.
Now, did you think? I love that. Easily fascinated. That's wonderful. Now, did you think that that accelerated level of perceived success? Excuse me, that perceived success that you had thrust upon you, do you feel that also at the same time exposed you to yourself with respect to the fact that shit, I'm being lauded as this winner of whatever it is, right? Of this transform. Did it make you feel almost like you were something of a fraud because you really didn't know who you are, or didn't know who you were, or couldn't define who you were?
I think it's not so much that it made me feel like a fraud. It's more like probably more of an unworthiness more than a fraud or imposter thing
Right.
would be what the feeling was.
Mm.
And I think that's probably like the feeling of being a small fish in a big pond is something that I go after. That feeling like that's a good thing.
Mm.
But I think when it comes to the areas of responsibility, I've been a bit lucky. My areas of responsibility are largely, I feel like it's within the realms of my competence to be
Yeah.
able to do it or figure it out. So, yeah. So, does that kind of?
Yeah, so I like, because I think what I'm sort of getting at is I think that sometimes when people focus, and I'm not saying that you did at that point, but sometimes people can focus on success to the point where they lose sight of who they are, and they lose track of who they are. I think in any sort of sales industry, particularly we see in real estate, people put on what they see or what they feel they need to as a persona in order to be successful.
Yeah.
But as a result of that, they actually lose who they are inherently as a person. And that is then what causes things like burnout. It's what causes anxiety and those sorts of things. When the pressure to chase success results in you either compromising or hiding your true self because you have that fear of your true self being judged and you are too busy trying to chase the thing.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where I'm thinking because with each element of this high performance human thing, there's fine lines that if you crossed and went the wrong way, it can very quickly turn into a problem, right?
Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
example, you take influence, for example. Influence can be used to a tremendously beneficial level for society, community, whatever, business. Influence can also be used for the absolute negative as well. And
Yeah.
it can, and as well as that, the pursuit of influence can lead to a real struggle in terms of that self-validation, vanity metrics that people chase and all that sort of stuff. In order to feel influential, they need to see 75 thumbs up on their Facebook post or whatever. Otherwise, their existence isn't validated. So there's very fine lines with each one of those elements that can contribute to either the good or the bad, whether it's personal or whether it's external. And I think that whole success thing, I think what we've stumbled across in this conversation, I'm really grateful that we have, so thank you, is that with success, with the chase and the pursuit of success, it can very quickly come at the cost of identity, of self, if we don't stay true to our own identity in that pursuit. Because the easiest thing to do is to I'll just hide this bit of me because that'll help me to create success quicker.
Yeah.
That'll if I just hide this element of it means that people won't judge me as much, and therefore I've probably got a higher chance of making more money or getting more business or becoming more successful. And so I think this journey that you've been on in terms of really looking to define who you are, I think it's a barrier, like I mentioned earlier, that we all perhaps need to go through in order to discover what true success is for us.
Yeah.
I don't know, we tend to go through plateau, we tend to go through steps of success, right? We go through that initial perceived what success is, and then we go, shit, it's not all that it's cracked up to be. And then so we try and go, and then we have to go through another sort of evolution to discover what success looks like for us properly in our whole true selves. I know I've gone through that massively. It's an interesting one that you brought up with that. And I'm really grateful that you have, that identity and success are very closely intertwined, and we can soon lose our own identity if we chase success too much. Do you think that's fair?
I think that's fair. And I think where it was different for me was I actually didn't have a picture of what success looked like for me. I kind of just wanted to stay in the background. So success for me was almost being avoidant of, being seen and
public adoration.
Yeah. And that was a little bit confusing because I'm like, well, I don't sell the houses. I don't, like, I mean, I've done all the different elements of property management at different stages, but I'm like, I don't want to be a property manager. I don't want to be a business development manager. I don't really. So like, I remember saying to Sam McLean at one point, I said, like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, what's the point of growing? And like, what's the point of all this stuff that I'm doing? What am I trying to do here? I don't do these things. And she helped me understand that it's for recruitment as well. Like, so as part of, I know that our biggest bottleneck to growth in a regional area is being able to attract the right talent in to maintain even the size that we're at, and then to continue to grow. So by me being, you know, connected in with the industry at a wider scale makes us a more attractive option for people, and then that, you know, what I learn feeds back into the business, and it's like this virtuous cycle. But yeah, I think it has probably maybe been an advantage. I've never really had a picture of what success looked like and had to chase that. But I guess I heard someone say a while ago, some people are more afraid of success than failure. And I definitely was one of those people. I think I was afraid of success rather than in relentless pursuit of success.
Yeah, and I think if we were all to look at ourselves in the mirror, I think that there'd be an element of truth in that for all of us, and I think that's something that I think we can all marinate on from this episode. Is ask yourselves the question, Yang: Am I worried about failing, or am I in fear of what success will bring? And I think that is a very valid, very, very valid question that we need to ask ourselves in the pursuit of becoming our own definition of a high performance human. Hey, Laura, I've taken up plenty of your time, and I tell you what, you have consciously or otherwise prompted some real strong thoughts that I think we can all take away from here and really marinate on. Gang, for those that are listening, if you do, if this has prompted any sort of thoughts or any sort of notions that you may have and you'd like to share it with us, please make sure that you do send us a DM. And also, team, please make sure that you connect with Laura on social media, because she is a little ray of sunshine. She's and I don't mean that in a condescending way. She's just an absolute gem of a human being. And like when it comes to those four elements, like I said to you before, gang, that third one, connection, is certainly one that Laura exudes in spades. So you'd be hard pressed to find a better example as far as I'm concerned. So Laura, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for joining us on the High Performance Human podcast and being so open to conversing over your own personal experience in the pursuit of that. Thank you to your beloved better half, Samuel, for allowing you to spend some time with us as well, and taking time out of the business. I know that you've been in and out, running around, doing all the various things that you do. So having you in the office would be a novelty for some of the gang. So it's great to spend some time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andy, and thanks for all your great questions. And yeah, I really enjoyed sharing today.